If I could only wear 2 watches for the rest of my life, it'd be these 2. But is that answer going to change 2 months from now? Yeah, probably. Hey guys, I'm Max and this is Hot Ones. So you hear this on the forums a lot. Man, if I sold all my watches, I'd be able to get the ultimate 2-watch collection. Or even worse, you wasted all your money on those watches when you could have bought your grail. Well, I've been thinning out my collection a little bit recently and thinking about this idea. And what I realized is that there is this huge cognitive, what's called hindsight bias in this statement. So in this video, I'm going to try to explain 3 reasons why I think for most people, it's pretty unrealistic to sell everything and get down to a 1, 2, or 3 watch collection. So first things first, watches are expensive, right? And this is one of the reasons why people who are not in the hobby don't really understand it, because people are used to buying things that are designed to break, and they don't understand that a good mechanical watch can last for decades. I remember when I got my first $500 watch, and I think it was a Hamilton Khaki automatic. And I thought, well, this checks off all the boxes, right? It has a sapphire crystal, it's got a Swiss movement, and history to boot. What else do I need? So you wear your Hamilton for a while, and then you handle your first Nomos. And you say, wow, the details are so fine. And what's an in-house movement? Yeah, I want one of those, right? And so you get your Nomos and you're like, I'm never going to need more than $1,000 of watch. But that's until you see one too many pictures of like a Black Bay 58 on Instagram. And the next time you get your bonus at work, you're like, well, I'm going to splurge and get that Black Bay. And so you get the watch and you're like, I get it. I understand what true luxury is. This is a watch made by Rolex. Then some time goes by and you're like, is it a real Rolex? Maybe I deserve a real Rolex. So the point is that price ceilings are relative, and it takes time for you to appreciate the difference between a $600 watch and a $6,000 watch. And I'll link my video about that specific title in the description. And so I think it's pretty unrealistic to think that a beginner can just hop straight to, dropping 5-10 grand on a watch, because psychologically it takes time, it takes years to get to the point where you can justify that purchase. So the rabbit hole of watch knowledge goes deep, and that's because watch technology has been refined for hundreds of years. And so in the beginning, you might know the difference between a mineral crystal and a sapphire crystal. But then you have to learn the difference between a horizontally versus vertically actuated clutch chronograph. And then do you know the difference between an annual and a perpetual calendar? This all takes time to learn. And that's before we talk about vintage watches, because we have to remember something like 70% of watch manufacturers went out of business during the quartz crisis. And so if you want to get into vintage, then you have to learn new names. You have to learn serial numbers for the watches that you like, not to mention the nicknames enthusiasts have given to special models. Recently we did a video on the Pepsi GMT. Just by changing the bezel, you can have the Coke GMT or the root beer GMT or the blueberry. So you hate to buy a watch and then the next week find a slightly different version of the same watch that you like better. And so telling a beginner to drop a bunch of money in the hopes of finding their grail watch is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You're going to make a lot of mistakes on your way during this hobby, and you'd rather make those mistakes on cheaper watches than really expensive ones. You can think of this as the tuition that you pay in your education for watches. Think back to the first watch that you ever liked, and I bet today you wouldn't take a second look at it. And so our fashion sense evolves over time. I remember when I first got into watches, I couldn't stand the Rolex Mercedes hand. But looking at it over time, understanding Rolex's design language, at least today I've made my peace with it. And I've learned so much about art and history through watches. For example, doing that video on the Junghans Max Bill, I learned about the Bauhaus school and how they tried to deconstruct everyday objects to find some common design language in the utilitarian nature of things. And having that universal Genève pull router, you can see the Art Deco elements of the geometric shapes on the dial. This is all part of the fun. And can we just talk about watch sizing for a second? I feel like when you first start, everybody is told 39, 40 millimeters is the perfect size for a watch, as if we all had the same wrist. Well, over time, I've realized there's so many other factors that contributes to how big a watch wears. Things like the thickness of the watch, the relationship between the size of the dial and the bezel, the length of the lugs, the width of the lugs, the shape of the lugs. The knowledge of these things can only be gained through the experience of putting different watches on your wrists and understanding how they fit your particular anatomy. And so in the end, we have to allow time and experience to mature our personal style, because what you like today might be different than what you like tomorrow, a month from now, or a year from now. So in my opinion, watch collecting is a journey, and trying to reach some sort of ultimate goal, I think, is mistaken. Pining after a watch, doing your research, saving up for it, getting it, falling in love with it, maybe falling out of love with it, and then having to sell it. This is all part of the process. There's nothing wrong with getting advice from someone who is, say, further along on the watch journey than you, but even if you did get your ultimate watch, the likelihood that you'll feel the same way about that watch a year from now, I think, is very low. Anyways, guys, make sure to drop a like on this video. Also, I'm thinking about doing a follow-up where we talk about the opposite, which is if you were trying to narrow your collection down to 2 or 3 watches, what are some of the strategies that you can take? So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.